I definitely think that white is 10 times.
Oh yeah, it looks a lot better. My shirt's red, and yeah, it's got that yellow in it. Yeah, that was that water temp was 47.8 in the main lake.
Damn, it came up. I can't believe it came up 4 degrees, almost 4 degrees.
And I went back in that creek, and it was I saw like 51.2, and then I went down to the other.
That don't surprise me.
I went down to the other end where the other boat ramp is, and it was like 49 point something, where the muddy water was coming in.
Yeah, well, that's where the main creek runs in, and the one where. That's where you're talking about the lily pads. I thought you were talking about the cove on the left.
Yeah. Past the stunt, like the standing timber flat.
Yeah,
and that point. Yeah, back in there.
Okay, yeah. So there's a creek that runs into that one too.
Yeah, that's the one was 51 something.
What's up, Aaron?
The other end. What's up, Aaron? Yo. Got 3 yo-yos. Oh man.
I think Aaron's been hanging out with his patients too much.
Yo.
But Aaron, we need to be yelling at Mr. Usher and get him on here. I haven't seen him. I forgot what his name was on here. If I see it, I'll probably know it. But
how's the audio?
Devin Walker, what's going on, dude? Damn, now they're piling in.
Devin, Greg, Aaron, how's the audio? Is it doing that kind of low thing again? We're kind of been working on that. We're gonna try to get that lined out tonight. You might have to bear with us for a minute. We got Doug in here. We got Jay Bassin. Got Ethan. What's up, dude? Good to see you on here.
It's kind of lagging there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Alex is in here. Chuck. What's up, Chuck? Alex is asking, how did Table Rock go? Table Rock was...
I'll say, do you want to get into that or wait till... I'd probably... I don't know. You do it if you want. I'd probably wait.
You going to wait a little bit?
Well, bring everybody in next week.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Mike was with me. Yeah, my travel partner, Mike Marfell, is going to be our guest next week. But, I can still talk about my side of it a little bit, not dive into it. It was tough for me. I ended up waiting, one keeper. I gotta get some water here. It was so tough, I'm choking up, man.
Dan P, I know you said it sounds great, and I see Logan says that too. We just want to clarify, it's not a real deep sound, is it? Because that's the whole part we're trying to get over. We don't know why it's making a real deep sound. Almost sounds like we're half sick or hitting puberty late. One of the two.
No, we're manly sound. We're manly sounding. So maybe we took care of it. No, Table Rock was it was fun. I learned a lot. Tournament. Like I said, I only waited in one keeper. I was fishing behind a guy that was a guide out there, Pete Winters, and he was fishing standing timber treetops out in about 30 foot of water, and he had the live scope. So he was lining up on these trees and making casts with an A-rig and counting it down. And he was actually watching his A-rig fall through his live scope. And when it got to the same height as the trees, he would start his retrieve. And as he came up to the retrieve, he fished with his rod in front of him. He would actually pull his rod up and kind of just drift that A-rig over the top of the trees. And he could see those spots come up out of the trees to grab his A-rig. And so I was kind of in the back throwing blindly, and I got hung up quite a bit. I lost quite a bit of stuff that weekend. Several A-rigs, several underspins, lots of jigs. Yeah. Yeah, I lost a lot of tackle, man. But, I mean, I've got plenty, so it's probably good that I thinned the herd a little bit. But I learned a lot, Seeing that guy do that was pretty eye-opening. And that's a different lake. The water clarity, I was telling Greg, the water clarity was anywhere from 8 to 14 foot visibility. Most of the places we were fishing was around that 12-foot visibility. So that's something that I'm not quite used to. There's no grass. It's basically, timber and rock. And the fish act quite a bit different there than they do around here. But that's why I wanted to fish that Ozark division. I want to learn this year.
So how many, you got 5 tournaments out there?
Yeah, I got 5 tournaments. 2 weeks we're fishing Lake of the Ozarks. and then we go back to Table Rock, and then the final two are Lake of the Ozarks. And we're going to bring up, maybe before we get our special guest on here, maybe after, we're going to talk about pre-spawn a little bit, and we can kind of talk about the different kind of lakes and how the fish, the pre-spawn patterns and stuff of the different kind of lakes. So,
yeah, I know
Jay said sounds better. It's good.
Yeah, everybody said it sounded a lot better. It sounds
Good.
normal, so that's good. DBBTS said, a little 40-degree water temps are very tough. This weekend was not easy. Only had one. Dude, that's better than I was doing this weekend. I went yesterday, and it was ungodly windy. Trolling motor was set on high, and I could stay in position about for maybe 5 or 6 seconds, and eventually they just start moving me back. I went into a couple coves, but they were on the wrong side of the lake, so there was nothing up in there. I didn't get any bites yesterday at all until I come home and fish in the pond. Got some little ones there, but that was it.
It's tough right now. I mean, that once that water gets up there around 50, those fish will start turning on. It's kind of like the fish are locked into shad right now. It's hard to get a jig bite, but when that water hits about 50, that's when the crawfish kind of start stirring, and that opens up a bunch of different baits. You can throw your rock crawlers, and then your jigs, and
Luckerville just said he picked up two of the rock crawlers.
Yeah, man, that's a good cold water crankbait. You can still catch them in the cold water. I caught a few on Egypt a couple weeks ago, and the water was still pretty cold. I've caught them in 41-degree water, but it's not consistent. Here in a couple weeks, it should become a lot more consistent. Let's see. What's up, Robert Daniels? Hank Snow Outdoors. South GA Bass. Shared it. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Thanks for sharing that. That really helps. Dan P says, do you think using the live scope is the future of fishing? Geez, it's nice. It does make a difference. It's kind of cover specific. If you're a guy that fishes a lot of brush piles, a lot of standing timber, especially a crappie fisherman. I mean, those guys can pull up. They've got their piles marked, and they can sit there and drop minnows down in the brush piles and stuff. But even for bass fishing, like what I was just talking about at Table Rock, fishing those treetops, I mean, that was a game changer. That guy could literally see how those fish were reacting to his Alabama rig, and he mentioned several times that they just weren't committing to it. They were following it. There was one time where I couldn't really see because he was sitting right in front of it. But there was one time he was kind of laughing up there, and I said, what? And he's like, check this out. He was kind of yo-yoing his A-rig right below the boat in about 30 foot of water. And he kind of moved over, and I'm sitting there. I walked up to the front deck, and I looked, and I could see this big cloud, which was his A-rig. And you could see these couple bass come up, and they go right back down. They wouldn't commit to it, but they would follow it up. So, yeah, that live scopes is pretty cool.
It's kind of like giving you that double advantage, like fishing a glide bait. Because the glide bait, a lot of times your fish won't commit to it, but they'll follow it all the way to the boat, which tells you where they're at. But getting a bite's a different thing. But
right, and if you're out there a lot, you can play around with it. You can, that you're doing the right thing because the fish are coming out and they're interested in. So you can make little tweaks. You can change different size swim baits. You can change colors. You can maybe chartreuse the tail, put spinners on there, take spinners off, and you can see how the fish respond. Which it's an amazing technology. I mean, I wish I had the funds to make it happen, but
if you really think about it, I mean, how many people are actually going to benefit from it? How many people actually get off the bank to benefit?
Right.
That's my biggest thing is all these guys are like, oh, you can see them eat, you can see them. That's fine and dandy, but you have to get offshore to do it.
Right.
I mean, and there's a lot of guys that just won't do it. I mean, they're stuck to their guns, and they're gonna stay on that bank. And I think that's going to be the difference. Is your guys that fish offshore, it's going to benefit them a bunch. Mm-hmm. But your guys that are just going to beat the bank, I don't think it's not going to do anything for them.
Like Table Rock, you can't beat the bank. Those fish live deep. They're totally different fish than what I'm used to. They live out deep, and that live scope is a huge advantage for locating those treetops and fishing them. Yeah, I mean, it's something else. So got Full Armor Bassin on here. What's up, dude? Good to see you on here.
Yeah, so you made it in. No Holmesworth Dangler did.
What's up, Tom? Had a
South
couple.
Georgia.
Tom said he had a couple of friends that finished in the money on both sides of Table Rock. That's awesome, Tom. Yeah, it was tight. I only caught one fish. If I would have caught another, I would have been like in the 40s. And actually, if we went out the next day and I caught 2 nice fish, that would have put me up in the 30s. So that's how tight it was for the coast side.
See what Luckerville put on there?
What Luckerville put on there? What did that guy say?
So I'll put this one up here. Oh,
let's see here.
So
Luke says, just heard about a guy who has caught 3 crappie over 3 pounds this year alone using live scope. Chases them down until they eat. Says he will catch the state record using it. Yeah, Matt Panrack on Bass Talk Live has kind of become obsessed with using the live scope to chase down single fish. And they kind of got a little secret technique going out there wherever he fishes. I guess it's in Oklahoma somewhere.
Yeah,
that's where they're from. But yeah, it's amazing. That live scope is something else.
He fishes 10 killer a lot, doesn't he?
He does. He fishes 10 killer a lot. Yep.
Gabe said, last video, where'd it go here?
Moccasins on here. What's up, Moccasin?
There went. Last video you put out when those were, toads on that spinnerbait.
Oh, yeah.
They should have brought that up and showed it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'll kind of keep that a little bit to myself. It's not so much the spinnerbait. It's just about just covering water and confidence in it, keeping it in your hand, and it's just little things, I don't know. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. You're usually fishing for bigger fish. You don't catch a whole lot of small fish. Most of the fish you catch are 2.5 pounds on up to 6+. And most of them are like 3 to 6, somewhere in that range.
Yeah. Ron, if you're still on there, did you get that email? So make sure you got it there.
Oklahoma's Worst Angler says, but thanks, Sean. I appreciate that, man. That was a good day, man. Oklahoma's Worst Angler says, do you think there's going to be rules against live scope in tournaments? No, I don't think so. I mean, it's already out there. They curtailed the A-rig in a lot of tournaments, but I think as far as electronics, there's too many companies that are funding too many of the tournament trails, and I just don't see it changing. I mean, you still got to catch them. You really do have to catch them, and there is an advantage. I think if you don't have it, I don't know. You're still going to catch them if you're out there a lot and you do your homework. The side scan, you got to at least have the side scan, to find that stuff. But I don't think
that goes back to like what I was saying earlier. If a guy's just going to beat a bank, and it's almost an aggravating thing. Is I see there's tons of guys out there, and I'm not calling anybody out and saying they're stupid or anything like that, but spend $1,700 on a depth finder, but just beat the bank all day. Right. I mean, it's pointless. If you're not going to fish out off the shore and out in deeper water and stuff like that, I mean, a live scope does you no good whatsoever.
Right. And you were talking about guys that fish shallow that have live scope. My buddy Joe fished the Costas last year, and he was at Gunnersville, and his boater was using the live scope to line up on the outside of a grass edge. So he would come in tight, and he would roll that trolling motor. He would find the grass edge, and then he would cast his A-rig just a foot outside of that grass edge. So that kept him from getting hung up. That's how he was using it in a shallow water situation.
Yeah. And one thing now you said that I thought about this, not so much the live scope, but what is it, the pan optics? That goes forward, but I don't know how.
So does the live scope.
Yeah, I didn't know how straightforward out it went. I mean, I didn't know if it was more of a cone down or if it was straight out. You know what I mean?
Well, Oklahoma's Worst Anglers use that quite a bit. He could probably tell us, but the guy I was fishing with, he had 75 foot forward. I know Matt from 3 Pound Fishing. He uses like 30 foot forward, but he's fishing brush piles,
right?
But this guy had 75 foot forward, and that was about his cast. He was making 75 foot cast, and he said that's about as far out as you can get a decent picture. So an A-rig is really big. If you were throwing something like a baby swim bait or something, he probably wouldn't be able to see it 75 feet out. But since that A-rig is got so much deflection on it, that live scope is able to pick it up, and then as it comes to you, of course it gets larger and larger and you can see it. But so there are some limitations in it. The further out it is, the worse the picture.
Yeah, and like Alex said, Oklahoma's Worst Angler, he said, I haven't thought so either, but it's a topic I hear a lot. you can find the fish, but you can't make them eat. I think the live scope's easy just to get obsessed over a fish. So that makes sense. I mean, I could see somebody out there spending hours and hours, but it's the same deal as fishing, bed fishing. I mean, you could do the same thing.
Right.
I mean, I can tell you for a fact over at Kincaid, I've seen one over there. It was probably 8 pounds, I'm guessing. And it was only in about 3 foot of water. And I fished for hours trying to get that stupid thing about.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't happening. I threw everything I had in my boat at it.
Right.
I mean, the only other thing I could have thrown was a bigger treble hook and snagged it. But,
right.
It would not go after anything.
Well, with that live scope, even though you can see the fish in the way that it worked out for the guy I was fishing with a couple of days ago was he was able to see the tops of those trees. So just take the whole fish out of the equation and let's just talk about casting a bait out and keeping it from being snagged in a tree. That's where that live scope helped him. He was able to see his A-rig fall to the same level as those treetops, or like a foot above it, and reel. And he could see as it got close to the treetops, he was able to speed up his retrieve and kind of lift up his rod, and that A-rig went right over it. Now, for instance, me in that same scenario, I would have a loose ideal because you couldn't see these trees. We're in 30 foot of water and they topped out in 10. So the tops of these trees are 10 foot down, 10 to 15, maybe 20 foot down. So you can't see them with the visual. You don't have a visual on them. So he's able to use that live scope to keep his baits from getting hung up, whereas somebody that doesn't is going to be getting hung up quite a bit more. Of course, you can count down when you get comfortable with the weight and the swim baits that you're using on the A-rig. You can certainly do a lot better, but that's one big advantage of that live scope is just be able to see what you're throwing at, what you're reeling into.
All right, Ron, I sent it again. I don't know why it didn't come through there, but
Brian's in here. What's up, Brian LaCroix?
Yeah, and I did see on there. Oh, Benny Williams wanted to know what the big ones are biting over on Cedar.
Oh, Benny. Geez, man, you watched the video. If you watched that video I did, that's what I've been throwing over there. I haven't been over there much. That was the first time I've been over there in a couple months. Typically, it's just kind of a jerkbait and a jig. That's what a lot of the guys use. It's just really about finding the areas that the fish are using. Just those fish in the grass lakes, they stay around the grass most of the time, or they'll suspend out there. But when a lot of times when they're feeding, they're going to be somewhere around that grass. Just about any lake that has grass, the fish relate to the grass all year long. So it's just a matter of finding productive areas. The downside is that the water is so cold and muddy. Right now, the water is about a foot to foot and a half visibility down on the Pomona end. And it was 43 to 44 the other day. I think that was last week. I would say it's probably 46 now because we've got that rain and we've had some warm days, but that's still cold. So the downside is it's hard to cover water and fish slow enough to catch the fish this time of year.
Yeah.
But
so Adam's got a good question for you here, which I've covered this several times.
Okay. He says, Gabe, I noticed when you caught those pigs in your last video that you didn't have a steady retrieve on your spinnerbait. You would get a reaction after some twitches. Yeah, that's kind of key on that retrieve. And a lot of that is I'm touching grass. When you see me doing that twitch, my bait is kind of running into grass. So I'm twitching it and I'm kind of cleaning the grass off of it a lot of times. Yeah, I'm kind of slightly ripping it, but not real hard because the fish are kind of sluggish. But if you go, I'm not telling you to go back and watch it. You're probably tired of watching it one time, but if you were to watch it, my reel handle, I'm doing a lot of stuff with the reel handle too. I'm slowing that down as I come over grass. I'm kind of letting it fall. And then if you just crank it a little bit faster, it speeds up. And then usually when I'm doing the twitches, it's clearing grass or it's coming right to the edge and I kind of twitch it and slow my reel handle down and let it fall. But that just comes from just throwing that thing a lot and kind of figuring out how it reacts and how to generate bites on it.
I'm the same way with the spinnerbait, and a lot of people I fish with, they're like, "Man, why do you move? Everything's different," and that's just how I fish a spinnerbait. A steady retrieve. I mean, yeah, they get you bites, but when you start learning to slow those blades down, or even stop them, or speed them up at different instances, if you're running over brush piles, stuff like that, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Now, a lot of times, if you're fishing, say you're throwing a 1 ounce spinnerbait not the big Colorado blade, but something you're fishing deep, say 20 foot of water, 15, 20 foot of water, and you're really trying to slow roll it and keep it on the bottom, then that's when you just keep it coming. You might bounce it on the bottom and just kind of lift it up a little bit, but you're trying to keep it pretty much steady. It's, but around the grass, yeah, I do a lot of little twitches and stuff.
So this is coming back on the other deal here.
Oh, okay.
So farther the view, the smaller targets on screen, and the more shallow the setting, the more interference you get. Well, that makes sense. I mean,
yeah.
Like I said, I have yet to try it out. I need to go over and visit Matt. And
it's pretty eye-opening.
I'm sure it is.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, you watch the videos and you see it, but when you're sitting there and you can see those fish react. He uses I think it's a size, I don't know, like a size 1 split shot. It's a really big split shot, and he's using 8 or 10 pound test, and it seems like it's overpowered for that setup. But he says that split shot is perfect for the live scope to pick up. So he can see that split shot. If he goes to some smaller split shots, it's harder for that live scope to pick up. So he'll see his actual split shot, and he knows his minnow is right underneath that, and he can watch the fish come up towards that split shot, knowing that his minnow is just 6 inches below that.
All right, guys. Before we jump in, Sophie's on there.
Hey, what's up, Sophia? Hope you got your homework done.
I say Sophie. I don't know why.
That's
Sophia.
Yeah, her grandpa calls her Sophie too. So
yeah. Sorry, Sophia. So you guys, hopefully you guys have your smallmouth questions coming up. We are going to get on here and get Ron in here. See if we get him here. And we're going to plug in our headphones here.
All right.
Hey, guys.
What's up, Ron? Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Give us a second here.
Holy cow. Wow.
Is it? I got a volume on there. Turn that down.
All right. Can you hear us, Ron?
Yes, sir.
All right. Turn it all the way down?
Yeah, talk. I'm just going to show you here.
Is there echo or anything?
It's still coming through here.
Still coming through there.
Yeah, we're trying to figure this out here.
All right. Let's
guys, how's that sounding online? Give us a little bit of feedback. I think he's coming down. You're on those speakers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's going on, Ron? How you been?
I'm good. Today's about the only day of the last 10 days I haven't been fishing.
Really?
Yeah.
It's still coming through.
It's still coming through.
Kind of felt weird.
Yeah. It was a nice day too. You should have been out there.
Oh, I know. If it wasn't for a doctor's appointment, I would have been. I'll be out there tomorrow, though.
Right. Okay, guys. 1 second, Ron. Let us know how the audio is.
It's saying horrible. I figured that.
Okay, there's some minimal reverb.
Yeah.
Little reverb. Okay. So we need to.
Hang on, let me turn it down here.
Okay. Hey, Ron, turn down your audio just a little bit, maybe to where you can just barely hear us, or just enough to hear it. Let's see that. Okay, be patient with us, guys. We're about to get this worked out. Unfortunately, we have to do this real time to get to the bottom of it. We did some sound checks the other night after the live stream, and everything was fine. So, okay.
Let's see here.
All right, Ron, are you talking any?
Got it. That didn't work.
No, I'm picking him up in here.
Picking him up in here? Okay. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, guys, how's it sounding out there in YouTube land? Is it sounding any better? Tom says we still got an echo.
Fishing Fat Man said it's getting better.
It's getting better. Okay. Well, we're definitely not any audio technicians.
No,
but we're trying, man. So what's up, Ron? You're down here until May. Is that when you make your trip up north, or?
Yeah, I'll be here until the end of April, first weekend of May. And we have a season in Minnesota. The season starts the second Saturday of May, which is Mother's Day weekend, and then we'll be hard after it.
Okay. Cool. That's going to be fun. And they're still catching through the ice up there, right?
Yeah, the walleye season just ended as far as ice fishing goes. You can still panfish and whatnot through the ice. Any walleye you catch now would have to be released immediately. But yeah, they're fishing. We're just crossing our fingers. We have ice out by the end of April.
Okay. Is that typically when the ice starts melting up there?
Yeah, that's pretty average. I've been up there and seen it clear a couple weeks before the season. And I've also had an opening day where we still had a quarter of the lake still frozen in the second week of May. So it can swing both ways. So it can be a little precarious, or you could have a couple weeks of good weather and the fish are pretty shallow by the time you start.
That's cool. So do they get? I've always heard that right after ice out, the fish just go crazy. I mean, they're real aggressive. I guess they've had that ice over their head for so long that they're just ready to munch. Is that true?
Yeah, you can as soon as the ice is out, they're catchable. You've had some good weather for a long time for the ice to be out, and you'll have 3 feet of ice, that they're getting rid of. So by the time that melts, it's been pretty nice out. The days are really getting long by then. You have a lot of sunshine. It warms up very quickly. And the lake is, Mille Lacs is a shallow lake. The lake is only 40 feet deep in the deepest parts, and there's not much of that. So it warms up really quickly. The winds obviously play a big part in that. But those fish are ready to go when the ice comes out, no doubt.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, we got some guys on here that are curious about smallmouth fishing up there. What are some of your go-to techniques up there?
Well, I'll go through a typical scenario. Every year, there always ends up being something unique every year. But typically, the ice goes out, season comes in, and the fish, they're working their way in towards the spawning areas. You'll catch a lot of fish in 10 to 18 feet of water, like on football head jigs, maybe 3/4 ounce football head jigs, reeling across the rock reefs. It's almost all offshore fishing. Then as the fish get shallower, you're fishing rock edges the whole time. It's just whether it's deeper or shallower. Rock with sand transition is key. And then big boulders help. Once the fish get shallower, the Ned rig comes into play a lot. Actually, the Ned rig's good all the time. Drop shot. We throw a hair jig, which is maybe a little different than what we think of as a hair jig, like vertical jigging for shad or something. We throw a little 16th to 1/8 ounce black hair jig, and you'll throw that as far as you can and just reel it back really steady, no action, and they'll gobble that thing up. And then once they finally get up where they're going to be, all sorts of baits come into play. Top water, spinner bait, swim baits are always good. And just kind of progresses like that as they go from deep to shallow. But it's always rock or rock sand transition as they come up these massive reefs that Mother Nature left in Mille Lacs.
Oh, how big is Mille Lacs?
Mille Lacs is 132,000 acres, and it's a big bowl. North to south, it's about 21 miles long. East to west, it's about 16 to 17 miles wide. Most of the lake is 30 feet of water or shallower. The lake is approximately 15,000 years old. It was made by part of a glacier that made Lake Superior. And when the glacier retreated, it left all these scars on the bottom of what is now the lake. where these rock reefs are, which I guess is the deposits from the glacier as it retreated. And when I say rock, I'm talking about boulders, sometimes 6 to 8, maybe 10 feet high and that big around. All the rocks are kind of round from rolling under, they call them rounders, from rolling underneath the glacier 15,000 years ago. And it's part of the lake. They have some mud flats and whatnot. But that rock sand thing is pretty prominent.
So, got a quick question for you, Ron, just for one of the guys.
What kind of temps do you see the smallies moving shallower? Well, on Mille Lacs, 33 degrees. I mean, as soon as that ice goes out, and as soon as that ice goes out, it's typically it'll jump to 40 degrees really quick. It's the length of days really that pushes those fish more than water temperature, I think. They have a very small window in which to reproduce. You know, by the time the ice goes out and they spawn, they have to spawn fast enough for the fry to kind of gain hold and grow during the short season before winter hits again. So the fish, you know, they've learned to not mess around. The walleye spawn right as the ice is going out, and sometimes under the ice they'll even spawn.
Wow, I had no idea. That's awesome.
Yeah, and so the smallmouth, you know, as soon as the ice goes out, so the length of days is driving those fish shallower. And the actual spawning activity typically takes place full moon of June is usually the peak, but you need water temperatures probably 54, 55, you know, steady, and then warming from there really for the smallmouth to really start bedding up. And then once they start, they come in waves. You know, the spawn will last, you know, 3 weeks to a month, depending on each year and the weather.
So what's their main food source for the fish up there?
On Mille Lacs, it is mostly crayfish. I don't know the percentage, maybe if I'm guessing 60% crayfish, and the other 40% would be minnow-based, and also the bug hatch is a big deal. So we don't see so much around on our smaller lakes here, but on Mille Lacs, you've all heard of the mayfly hatch, and there's other nymphs and whatnot that hatch. I know you're a trout fisherman, Gabe, you know, and the trout are keyed in on different hatches and whatnot. We get 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever hatches during the summer. And they always seem to come at a time when the fish need them. They're a great food source to the fish. And they come from the hatches come from the bottom of the lake. The larvae work their way to the surface. They leave their cocoon, and then the insect fulfills its life cycle. And those hatches you can see on your depth finder. It'll look like a huge cloud of bait fish on the depth finder. There'll be acres.
Wow.
And that, of course, affects the fishing and the techniques you use. And, you know, sometimes it'll slow the fishing down. Typically, we get a big bug hatch right after spawn. Mother Nature kind of times that for them. And those fish feed up on the bug hatch. Topwater can be really good then. You'll see them eating bugs on the surface in the evening. And it's kind of neat to watch a 4 and 5 pound smallmouth come up and slurp on a mayfly.
Yeah, just like the trout does. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and if the lake's calm, which isn't very often, but if the lake's calm, you can look and see for miles, and you can see that stuff going on. It's really kind of neat.
So do you think they feed on the larvae like subsurface as they're making their way to the top? Mostly once
yeah, they sure will.
Really?
They'll gorge themselves on that larva. So will the walleye, all the fish in the lake will take advantage of that food source, and it really helps those fish over the hump, specifically during post spawn.
Looks like we got another question for you there.
Yeah, spawning smallmouth in the small creeks in southern Missouri. I don't know much about that, to be honest. again, it's going to be temperature driven, just like all bass. And I would assume that changing water levels in creeks that we have here with the rains, you're probably going to need some stable water level. Just like I used to fish a circuit years ago on the Ohio River, and the spawn temperature was one thing, but if the river was up 4 feet and then down 4 feet, and crazy weather we get here, that those fish will hold off until they think they have some stable water level. So I would assume any river or creek smallmouth would be dependent on water level in addition to water temperature.
That'd be my guess too, Ron, in that 55-degree range. And I know on Kentucky Lake, the fish act the same way. If that lake is fluctuating, they won't pull up and spawn. They'll wait. Somehow they know when it stabilizes, and they'll get up quick and do their thing and they're gone.
Yep, and then when it starts to get back to the and this largemouth too, the lake comes up or the river comes up, some fish will charge the bank to take advantage of a food source. And when that river starts to drop, those fish will pull out and suspend. And then you always want to go back and look for them along that original area where they were before the water came up. And those sometimes they'll show up there before everything's totally stabilized too.
So I've got another question there for
Another
you.
question for you.
I got them rolling in now.
Let's see, how big is your personal best smallmouth? Well, it's pretty lucky. Last year, I got a picture on my RD Outdoors Facebook page back from last year. I was lucky and caught a 7-pound, 6-ounce smallmouth. And that was neat. State record is 8 pounds in Minnesota, so I thought that was cool. But the thing that was special about that fish is it was tagged. It was 22 inches long, which doesn't sound that long for a fish. It's not, but these fish up there are amazingly broad and fat. It was a pre-spawn fish to boot. But it had been tagged 2 years prior. It was 21.9 inches 2 years prior when it was tagged and measured. I caught it 2 years later. It was 22 inches, and it was 500 yards from where it was tagged. That was pretty cool, and it was especially cool. I was part of the tagging program 2 years prior. I got to work with the Minnesota DNR. Minnesota DNR is a very progressive DNR, and it was a blessing to be able to work with them. And then to catch that fish after having worked on that program was pretty cool.
Got another one there from you, from Moccasin Lures.
Let's see. I know a lot of smallmouth anglers that swear by lures in the bubblegum color. Not on, it does work occasionally. Honestly, the bubblegum color, I'd love to tell you, yes, help you sell some lures, but the bubblegum color really doesn't work that well on Mille Lacs for me. I know it's a huge player on the Great Lakes system. Couldn't begin to tell you why that's different, but some of the other guides I know that fish Great Lakes, bubblegum, it sounds like they jump in the boat when you put the bubblegum in the water. And it can be
bubblegum right now. I love bubblegum.
Yeah, there you go. And it can be a deadly color. It sounds like, especially if you're throwing it on a bed. I have used it bed fishing for smallmouth to see it, and then I can see when the bait disappears. Just like we throw white around here, like on a largemouth bed. I have used it for that's why I use it, for me to be able to see it. When the fish gobbles it up, it's gone. But as far as the rest of the year, on Mille Lacs, for whatever reason, the natural colors really are prominent.
It's like you got one from Chris Batman.
I used to burn up smallmouth on hellgrammites in the river. I'll imagine. Yeah, I need to take advantage of some of the river fishing around here. I know I used to, for about 15 years, I had a duck hunting lease out west of Dexter. And I know some of the rivers and streams out there are smallmouth, and all my buddies would tell me about them. And I need to take advantage of that.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a few small streams in our area that hold some smallmouth. I think didn't you say caught a 3 pounder out of a stream around here? Which that's a really good smallmouth to be streamed. But the Kern River, Black River are all small rivers in this area, and they hold a pretty good population of smallmouth.
If you got a small kayak, even a small canoe, you can go for miles on that. And there's deep holes all around that.
Yeah. You just got to know where the holes are this time of year. You know, the cold water period, they migrate to the deeper parts of the river, and it's kind of I don't know. There's a lot of guys that take advantage of that and possibly overdo it because they are so congregated in the smaller pools. But you know, if you know where they're at, and you can have some really good.
I know Bob Slaughter. I've seen he's on here now. He fishes a lot of them in his kayaks. He's constantly going up and down the Clean Creek. So,
It's like whitewhale fishing. I have another question for you, Ron.
Yeah, let's see. So, what is your approach to catch smallmouth in the pre-spawn? I think the biggest truth I can tell. Now, this is Mille Lacs, is most of my smallmouth experience. The biggest truth I can tell you is that Ned rig, man. That Ned rig is deadly, and we probably throw it. I don't know what percentage of the time is. We probably throw it 60% of the time we're there. It's a great bait for a client to throw. This is on spinning, 10-pound, 10 to 15-pound braid, 8 to 10-pound fluorocarbon leader, and the Ned rig in a 1/5 or a 1/6 ounce head. And then the small Ned rig,
like a TRD.
And yeah, the TRD. And I like that type of plastic that they make because it literally floats. So when that Ned rig, for any bass in clear water that is crayfish oriented, that Ned rig, when that head sits there, that plastic from that deal literally floats up, and it looks exactly like the defensive posture of a crayfish. And a lot of times you'll let it sit there a minute, and then all of a sudden you'll feel your bite. And just imagine, you know, what a bass looks like when it approaches a crayfish. That's exactly what they're doing. Let that bait sit there a second, all of a sudden you'll feel just a little tick, or your line will swim off. Then the beautiful thing about Mille Lacs is you don't really, once you hook a fish, it's not like there's no cover for them to get into. You know, it's open water, so you know you might be 2 miles offshore fishing 6 feet of water, and then it's just let your drag work and take pictures when you get fishing. But that pre-spawn, the Ned rig, you just can't beat, really. If you're going smallmouth fishing in clear water, I don't care what lake you're on, as long as the cover you're on will allow it. Have a Ned rig. The other thing, pre-spawn, there's 2 other baits. Oh, I'll give you 3 other baits, actually, that you should always probably have. Again, clear water. A jerk bait is an excellent smallmouth presentation, a suspending jerk bait. A football head jig, and then the hair jig, which is something that's really not thrown here the way they throw it up north. Now, up north, it's a staple, and it's actually a procedure that kind of came from Canada. There's a big tournament every year in Canada that a lot of the pros fish, and it was won several years in a row by guys drifting this hair jig thing. And then it kind of caught on, and it worked its way south. And I learned it from Seth Fighter, who I'm sure everyone knows, fishes the elites. Seth did a tutorial on it on DASF's university thing that I'm sure a lot of guys have watched. Mm-hmm. And it's if you haven't seen that, I would look that up. I'm playing with it down here. I haven't quite figured a niche out for it down here yet, but when I do, you won't know about it.
As long as you don't have me in the boat with you while you're doing it.
Yeah, then you'll be taking pictures of it.
Camera rolling real good.
Yeah, that's right.
Do it on 4K so we can zoom in really good.
So that's on a spinning gear, right? Like this.
Spinning
right?
gear. Yeah.
With what, 6 pound set or?
No, pretty much all of my spinning is that 10 to 15 braid. The difference on 10 to 15 braid is how far of a cast I'm wanting to make. If I'm throwing that 16th ounce hair jig, I will drop down to 10 for casting distance. And then 8-pound, I don't really go less than 8-pound fluoro on that, just because I figure I'm going to have 10-pound braid on there anyway. And with the rocks and whatnot, you do need a little bit of, we have zebra mussels there, so you have to account for a little bit of abrasion with the zebra mussel, which is obviously an invasive species.
I got a Ned head for you now. I want you to try. I was fishing table rock, and I kept getting hung up on the Z-Man Ned rigs. And I bought this little, it's an owner Ned rig, and it's got just 2 little monofilament fibers on it. It's a ball head though. And I never lost one. I don't know why. So I was kind of impressed. I'm going to give you a couple and have you take them up there and see if you think it made a difference or not. I'm just curious.
I'll throw it. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Could save you some money because I know you probably go through a lot of those.
Yeah, we go through a bunch of them. Part of it. Let's see here. Looks like another question here. Do smallmouth spawn in deep water, deeper water than largemouth? And at what water temperature does it start? I fish the creek, spring. Yeah, water temperature 55, I think, is a good general rule for the smallmouth. They'll spawn in a little bit colder water than the largemouth. They'll start a little sooner. And spawning depth in any system, largemouth or smallmouth, is directly correlated to water clarity. The clearer your water, the deeper they will spawn. So that's just system specific. I know from my biologist friends on Mille Lacs, they'll spawn 15 to 18 feet, some of the deeper fish.
Wow.
And the clearer the water is every year, the further they can push that envelope. And there's actually, the deeper they spawn, the less they're messed with too. So,
right.
And some of those fish will be spawn a little later, I think, sometimes too. They're spawning deep.
I got a question for you real quick before we get into some of the other ones. You mentioned Seth Fider. There's several guys that are on the national scene that are from up in that area. Let's see, even old school guys like the Lenders. Do you ever run into those folks out on the lake? There all the time?
Yeah, I sure do. I'm fortunate to be friends with some of them, or at least acquaintances. Funny story about the Lenders. I actually worked for them back in the 80s. That was my first guiding gig. I worked for Ron and Al Lender. Back in the mid 80s, they had a place called Camp Fish. It was a camp for kids. It was just like kids have basketball and football camp. I was a camp counselor / guide / instructor. That was one of my jobs in college. That got me kind of introduced to Minnesota fishing. FLW pro Josh Douglas, another FLW pro, touring pro, fishes the same circle with Josh as Andy Young. Andy's helped me with some of my guide trips before. Of course, Seth Fider, there's a fella by the name of JP Kimbrough, fishes the BASS Opens, who has worked with me in the past on guiding. So it's a really high quality circle of fishing talent that exists on Mille Lacs, and I just been completely blessed to be a small part of that and to be involved in the life cycle of the lake. And it's the lake, the lake itself, Mille Lacs. If you've never been to a destination lake like Mille Lacs or St. Clair, Lake Fork, the communities typically thrive around the lake. And that couldn't be more true than on Mille Lacs. When you're at Mille Lacs, every person around the perimeter of that lake is somehow in tune with that lake. And it's kind of really a special thing, something I'm appreciative of, and it's something that needs to be preserved and a resource that needs to be respected.
Well, that had to be a really tough summer to work for the Linders as a guide and a counselor. I'm glad you survived that.
Yeah, and to this day, I make my living fishing, and
We're doing this all.
the getting paid part of it, the getting, and this is going to sound silly, but it's the truth. The getting paid part is the least rewarding part of it. It's necessary, pays the bills, makes my truck payment, my phone payment and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I almost feel guilty taking money from clients from going to do something I was probably going to go do that day anyway. So I'm just blessed to be able to do what I love and make a little bit of money on this, as I do it. And
that's great, man. I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
I'm sure it was a gamble, putting everything on the line and making that move. You kind of, anytime you're an entrepreneur, so to speak, it's always a risk because it's a lot easier to have that 9-to-5 job working for somebody. So I'm glad it's a success story. It's working out great for you.
Well, thank you. And I give a lot of credit to my girlfriend, Claire Stone. I don't know if she's watching or not. She tried to call a little bit ago, but I went through a little bit of a life change. I put 20 years into the finance industry. I always fished and guided part-time on the side. And anyway, after our company got bought out and so on, I was going down the road one day. We were in Nashville, Tennessee, and we saw a bass boat go by, going the other direction, going to Percy Priest Lake, I would assume. And my girlfriend slapped me while I was driving. I mean, hit me across the shoulder. She says, "Why don't you just do that?" And it was like literally getting hit over the top of the head with a frying pan. And I was like, duh. And I have family I have my Uncle Jim DaRosa, who's also a smallmouth guide on the lake. I had him up there already. He kind of helped me get my foot in the door and get established. And I also went up there. My timing, I was lucky. I went up there right when BASS was going up there for their. They had 2 consecutive Angler of the Year tournaments there. The first of which Seth Fighter won. I got to go up in the middle of that, it was just meant to be. I guess it just worked out.
That's awesome. Ethan's got a question here.
Yeah.
We'll keep you on here for just a little bit longer if that's okay, because we got a lot of questions.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm good.
Tell you what, which one you want? This one?
Yeah, the one of Ethan. We'll throw this one up there.
Yes. All my clients that come up always ask me that question, or people when they call me to book a trip. There's 2 times. It's never bad there. Okay, let me first state that. If you can get there, irregardless of the time you get there, but if you have the ability to pick, I would recommend from the opener up until the first week of June. That's pre-spawn. And then the other time is September into October for the fall bite. Both of those time frames, you have a potential for 100 fish days, which is not common there. There's places you can go in the country and catch more smallmouth, but you won't catch bigger ones. And those would be the 2 times I would recommend. There are other times you can have tough days there. I've had a few guide trips where we've only caught 6 or 10 smallmouth in a day. But heck, here in Southern Illinois, we catch 6 or 10 fish, and that's a normal day, so it doesn't bother me too much.
Right. And isn't Mille Lacs known for the size more than the quantity?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. The genetics are the smallmouth in Mille Lacs are somehow genetically different, predisposed. Seth Fighter says he can look at pictures of smallmouth and he can pick out a Mille Lacs smallmouth out of the picture lineup every time.
Huh.
And they're just got good genetics. I think part of it is that it's mostly crayfish based. These fish aren't roaming like in a shad school or something. spending a lot of energy to consume their calories. So they get on these reefs and just kind of live there. And they have all these crawdads. I mean, you can look down and see a rock and there'd be 50 crawdads on it. And when they get hungry, they go up and eat 3 or 4 of them. And then they relax next to this until, it's like never leaving your lounge chair, for 6 months. You're going to get fat.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. Kevin Van Dam, when he was up there, says he's never seen smallmouth that looked like that. You can catch a 18-incher, and that's 4.5 pounds. I mean, legitimately.
Wow.
It's
excited about the 3-pounders.
Wow, that's amazing. So, they're such beautiful fish. I was fortunate enough, and by the way, I'm going to kind of say this right here while we were talking about it. I've actually caught more smallmouth than Ron in 2020. It'll probably be the only time. I know come May, I'm not going to be able to say that, but he's been fishing in Southern Illinois, and I got to sneak over to Table Rock, and I caught a nice smallmouth. So as of right now,
the second Saturday of May, buddy.
Yeah,
your phone is going to get blown over.
Hey, I'm gonna work. I'm gonna live this as long as I can because it's gonna be short for sure. Looks like Whitewell has got another question for you about your knot.
Yeah, it sounds like you're fishing some pretty clear. What is your go-to leader connection knot on spinning tackle, and how often do you retie? Retie often. Not so much the leader knot, but down at the hook end of it because of the abrasion from working in the rocks. I like that Albright knot. Gabe and I have talked about this before. I think that's what you call it. I used to tie the double uni, and I could tie it in my garage. I'm wearing spectacles, and in my garage with good lighting, I could tie that double uni pretty well. But in a boat in the wind and so on and so forth, it took me a lot of time. And so anyway, I went online just like everybody, and I found this Albright knot, which is really simple, easy to tie. You can do it, no problem. You don't even have to see that well.
Yeah.
And I've never had it fail. I've never had it fail on a fish, ever. Sometimes if you get hung up and you're pulling, to break, you're trying to purposely break the line, you can't. I've had sometimes it'll fail right below the knot on the fluorocarbon side.
Yep.
But I have never had it fail on a fish, ever. Just make sure. Most important thing when you're fishing for quality size fish on light tackle, make sure you understand your drag. And that's one thing I will say. It's a lot of guys use these 2,500 size reels when bass fishing. I would recommend a 4,000 size spinning reel, regardless of brand. And the reason is, unless you're an expert back reeler, the larger the circumference of the drag on any spinning reel, the smoother it will be. And that 4,000 size reel, if you get that set right, depending on what size line you're using, it will work pretty flawlessly, and you won't lose any fish or bend the hooks out or anything like that, as long as that drag is set correctly on one of those little bit bigger spinning reels. And quite frankly, that bigger reel, I think balances out a 7-foot spinning rod a little better than the smaller spinning reel anyway. While it may be a little heavier, I think being balanced creates a little bit less fatigue by the end of the day.
And Ron, I'm glad you brought up that simple fact about knowing your drag system and reeling backwards, because that was actually going to be a question of mine. Because I know a lot of smallmouth guys that still use spinning setups reel backwards. I know even Tim Little on Practical Bass, they're watching fish for smallmouth. He reels backwards too.
Does the backwards? Yeah. I've never done that.
It's not something I'm comfortable with. But if you've grown up fishing that way, there's guys that do it very well, and there's nothing wrong with this. As a guide, it's much more practical for me to rely on, as long as I have my drags right, I don't have to worry about my clients. They can pick up a rod and do that very first cast if they get a bite. the odds are high that they're going to catch fish. And plus, I want to fish the same way that my clients are. I don't want to be doing something different than my clients, and I'm catching fish, and they're looking at me cross-eyed while they're doing something different than me, and they're not catching anything.
Right.
But I always try. I use the same rods that I have on the deck for them. Everything. That way, they know they have confidence in what they're doing, and they can just worry about fishing. And but that bigger reel is really important when it comes to using your drag on bigger fish in open water. It's really important. Hello. Looks like it froze up. The other folks, I know they lost. I got a message from those guys that they lost power. Are you guys still on there? Everyone else? I don't know if I'm. On there with you guys.
Ron, you there?
Yeah.
Hey.
We had a lightning hit and just boom, we shut down instantly.
Everything.
Yeah.
No, I saw it in the news before we got on. I was watching Channel 12 News, and it looked like there was some pretty heavy-duty thunderstorms rolling your way. So be careful.
Yeah, and even Doug said, "I guess it's your show now." You were still on there.
I didn't know if they could see me or what was going on there, but
you weren't picking your nose, were you?
No, not that this group would care.
Yeah, that's one nice thing about this program. Actually, is it kept it going, and we jumped right back into it. We didn't have to redo anything; it just went right back to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when we were talking to you, probably about 15 minutes ago, actually, right when we first started talking, it was raining, and I think it was hailing. It was hailing, like big hail. I'm kind of wondering if what my truck looks like when I got out there. So. Yeah, so we were trying to focus, but we could hear this clunk, 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 clunk outside the house there. So.
I'm sorry, man.
It's okay.
My truck's in the garage for about the only time ever. I took the big boat to Wounded Rig. He's just going to fix some scratches on it and stuff for me before I head north for the season. So I've actually got my truck in the garage. So if we get a hailstorm, I hope we get it tonight.
So you need me to bring my boat next week?
Come on.
Like I said, I want to go one day. I just don't know which day I'm going to do it yet. So I just want to go over there and get a little fishing done. Plus, I got to run my boat anyway. So it's only been idling around the little lake over here.
Yeah. Well, let me know when you come over.
Yeah,
But,
I will.
Any more questions on smallmouth fishing or anything?
I thought we had one more back up there. I think you covered. Oh, I know. Somebody asked what's your favorite color Ned rigs, or what colors do you recommend?
That's a good question. Every year there's a little nuance. You know how it is. Every year there's something different. But in general, and just like for your largemouth fishing here, dark color, dark days, light color, light days. Same principle really applies on Mille Lacs. On the dark, cloudy days or days with a lot of wind where there's not a lot of light penetration, we use a color called yoga pants, which is it's just a really dark green pumpkin, or green pumpkin is just those two colors. I basically whittled it down to that. And then on the light color days, I'll use a color just called peanut butter and jelly. And that's really it. And after that, you can put that on. You can just forget about worrying about the color and just worry about where the fish are, which is always the most important thing. You have the perfect lure in a bathtub or a swimming pool, you're not going to get bit.
Right.
You got to throw something where the fish are, and that's about as complicated as I make it. And I haven't seen a whole lot of circumstances where I felt like I was being outfished simply because something had a little different color.
Here's a pretty good question here. And actually, I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about this.
Let's see. Does Mille Lacs have shallow vegetation, or is it all rock? Do the smallmouth relate to the? Yeah. One of the exceptions to most of the fishing is done offshore, 12 months a year. The one exception to that, they have reed beds, like pencil reeds. A lot of those pencil reeds grow on shallow rock reefs, and they will penetrate those pencil reeds, especially early in the year. Before they grow, it's like a real dark mat under the water, and they warm up quick. And the smallmouth will move up into those to sun themselves, to warm up pre-spawn. So they will relate to the pencil reeds. And then we have milfoil, and we have a weed called cabbage weed, which probably a lot of the folks wouldn't be familiar with. And they will relate to the edge of the weeds with that, especially if those weeds are around some sort of rock base. If you can have weeds with rock, that's a pretty good combination. The problem you run into is if you have weeds, you also have toothy critters. And yeah, nothing wrong with catching a northern or a muskie, but you add that mix to it oftentimes with the weeds. Not that you can't catch a northern on the rocks, but
you catch those on a Ned rig too.
You catch everything on a Ned rig. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
There are days, I'm not kidding. There are days we will catch more walleye than smallmouth on that Ned rig on the Lacs. It's not uncommon to go catch 20 or 30 walleyes on that Ned rig, and nothing wrong with it. But it's just it's just an added mix to the day.
I'll say we go up there. We're definitely got to get some walleye. You ever caught any?
Walleye, yeah. I went on one trip to Canada. This has been, oh gosh, it's been 15 years ago. My dad took me and my brother up there, and man, it will really spoil you. We caught a lot of. I was telling Ron this when we were fishing. We were fishing with live leeches, and I don't know if you all ever fish with live leeches, but it is weird because they try to get on you and you're nervous. They got little suction cups. So I'm trying to get them on this little jig head as fast as possible. And the guide I was with, he said, just kind of let them stuck on your thumbnail. They can't really grab a hold of anything, and just kind of take that barb and stick it in and run it along your thumbnail and get them in the sucker and then just drive it into them. And I got pretty quick at baiting a hook out there. It didn't take very long at all, but phenomenal fishing.
Yeah.
It'll spoil you up north. Not only the clarity of the water and the scenery and the pristine of it all, but the fishing is just unbelievable. And you come back down here. I remember coming back down here and going to, I think it was 10K the following weekend. And I mean, just having to work really, really hard just to catch a few fish. And, you know, up there you get spoiled. You know, you catch 50 fish, no problem a lot of days. But it's,
and that's kind of my advantage sometimes up there against, you know, all of us guys, we have friendly competition. You know, how'd you do today? How'd you do today? You know, we share information, we help each other, but we also want to beat the other guy. And one of my advantages is when it's tough, relatively speaking, for up there. Sometimes I don't even know it's tough. I think it's pretty good. And we grind through it, and by the end of the day, we have a pretty good day. And sometimes some of my buddies up there, it gets a little tough, and they start running around and doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing. One thing I would like your listeners to appreciate about Minnesota. I've had the good fortune to fish a lot of different places, not just Mille Lacs and Minnesota, but Minnesota as a state. If I had to pick the best bass state in the country, I would pick Minnesota over Texas, over everywhere. Now, you're not going to go catch a 10-pounder. So if you're looking for a 10-pounder, that's not going to be in Minnesota. But there are hundreds of lakes in Minnesota where you can go catch 50 a day. And they'll be 2 pounds, 3 pounds, and they look like, every one of them look like a little football. Most of the lakes in Minnesota are natural lakes as opposed to impoundments. So it's basically weed edge based and that kind of thing. Very easy to pattern. And Minnesota's, it's really, I think it's got some of its due now that BASS has been up there in a few places. Major League Fishing has been there on a little lake north of me called Pekegama Lake. So it's, you know, the word's out, but it's an incredible state in general. If you can get to Minnesota and do a little fishing. And then a quick sidebar, I believe there might be a high school team from White Bear listening from Minnesota. My cousin's the coach there. If you all are, hey, don't worry, the ice will be out soon. Hang in there.
Yeah, I bet that gets old. It's probably fun when it first comes on, but after a while, it's got to get old.
Whitewell told me to pick him up on the way over there.
Yeah.
Greg, I have a feeling it's a little bit out of the way, about 3 hours.
Yeah.
12 hours straight, basically north. It's 12-hour drive from Southern Illinois.
Okay.
There's been a question sitting down here for a minute. What do you recommend on Lake Fork in mid-April? I don't know. I've never been on Lake Fork. I was fortunate enough to guide some people who are guides on Lake Fork and have a standing invite to go down anytime. I can only imagine that Lake Fork would fish similar to many of our reservoirs here. Mid-April, that could be post-spawn for some of those fish down there, I would assume. And I know post-spawn on Kentucky Lake, they're moving out of the bushes, starting to head towards the ledges. That's June on Kentucky Lake, so maybe mid-April, late April, you're starting to work out onto the long points and stuff on Lake Fork. But I'm also sure there's some shallow fish. They don't all spawn at once. There'll always be late spawners, depending on when that full moon is in April. So you could fish to your strength, I would think, in mid-April on any lake in Texas like that, and probably find a population of fish that was worth fishing for.
We threw that up there. We just wanted to see how you'd react to that question.
I'm not familiar with this Lake of Egypt.
Egypt, where's Egypt? Like Cairo?
I don't know. No, favorite bait on Egypt. Well,
Ned rig. He just said a Ned rig. I mean,
not on Egypt. I can catch fish on. There are some places on Egypt I can catch them on Ned rig as long as the water's clear. Kind of Egypt is a fun lake because you can catch them a couple different ways, especially now that it's warmed up and the creeks are in play. But in the winter time, I you can't throw it all the times in tournaments, but you can throw it on Egypt, and I like throwing the A-rig in the winter on Egypt. It's an addictive lure. I've kind of got it whittled down to a science as far as how to fish it on this particular lake. I don't know if it would apply another lake, but literally when you hit it right, you can catch 30 or 40 a day out here on Egypt if you hit it right on that A-rig. We had a tournament at English Choices last week, which we're not allowed to throw the A-rig, but we did catch some shadfish. We caught those fish on underspins and spoons, and cut a check. And
Freezing up there.
not on there. You lose me? You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, I've got storms here now.
That picture.
Say what?
We have to screenshot that.
We on that A-rig we did really well the week prior in USA Bassin, and got third place. I think we had 16 overs that day.
Wow, that's a great day.
Mostly on the A-rig. Probably had 30 or 40 fish. I don't know.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I learned a lot in being able to fish with you over there a couple times about the A-rig. So I definitely appreciate that.
Here's this is actually a really, really good question. I like this. Just see what your thoughts are on this.
Let's see. Need to talk about lake management. Yeah, always. Example, Cedar has the slot limit. Been there for years. Most guys catch and release bass. We need to keep our limits of below slot fish. Thoughts? I agree, 100%. I was actually part of a team back in the 80s. I was one of the ones that helped convince the city of Carbondale to switch from a straight 15-inch limit to the slot limit that's on there now. And when we talked them into doing that, we didn't want them to keep it that forever. It needs to be on any lake. The limits on catch and release and what you can keep and take needs to be dynamic. It needs to change as the lake changes. And I would agree that if I was a biologist, I would be taking a hard look at Cedar to see what's changed since then and what needs to be done. I don't know what the shocking surveys are showing on Cedar, but yes, it makes sense to keep the small fish. We don't want it to turn into Devil's Kitchen. Everyone that's fished Devil's Kitchen, it's just a bunch of little fish now, with the occasional giant. So selective harvest is very important in lake management. And agree that probably Cedar that slot limit should be revisited and at least looked at by the biologists. And I don't know the politics. I'm kind of a little bit removed from Cedar Lake anymore with me being in Minnesota, but yeah, I agree. It probably should be looked at.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I know, like my local lake here, I fish a lot. In the past 10 years, it hasn't been that great. And you hear guys all the time talking about, it's a crap shot out there. You never know what you're going to get. Fish don't bite real well. You don't catch good quality fish. Now, the last 3 years, I've watched it grow and grow and grow. And last year, I can tell you, we caught multiple 3 to 6 pounders. Now, that's the best it's been in years. But it's got a 15-inch limit on it. And like you said, if they don't start changing that every couple of years or every 10 years or whatever it may be, it's going to go right back down the drain again.
Yeah,
start keeping those bigger bass, and they're not going to be in there anymore.
Yeah, it's lakes. We've all fished long enough that we've all seen our favorite lake cycle a time or two.
Right. And
I've seen Cedar cycle 2 or 3 times. I've seen Grassy cycle. The fish management needs to coincide with whatever the status of the lake is at the time. One thing I can say about Cedar long term, as far as compared from the late 70s, 80s when I started fishing it till now, is in the 80s, a 6-pound fish in Cedar was not a big fish. It was a nice fish, don't get me wrong, But most of our weigh-ins and night tournaments and spring tournaments, an 8-pounder was very common. And every year someone caught a 10-pounder, legitimate, not just a storybook, but a legitimate 10-pounder. That doesn't happen anymore. I've had a day on Cedar where I have caught multiple fish legitimately over 7 pounds back in that time frame. Now a 6-pounder, you can still catch bigger, don't get me wrong, but it feels to me like there are so many of those 15 to 18-inch fish in that lake that, the population that a lake can withstand is kind of shaped like a bell curve, with the small fish on one side, the big fish on the other, and the medium-sized fish kind of making up the majority of those fish. And those medium-sized fish in Cedar are taking up most of the room for bass population in Cedar. I have talked with a couple of biologists about that in Cedar. And my personal preference is I'd rather have a few less 3-pounders and a couple more 7-pounders.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, but they've told me that the lake is probably one of the most healthy. This information is probably 2 years old. Was probably the most healthy lake in Illinois as far as those 15 to 18-inch fish. And if they told their boss they wanted to change that, they'd be afraid they'd lose their job. So it's kind of where they're at on it, I would assume.
Yeah, most of those tournaments over there. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
You're good.
It takes about the big bass is usually 5'3" to 5'6". That's I've been fishing quite a few of them the last couple of years, and that's about what it is. Those tournaments that I fish over there, the USA Bassins and the English Choice, it's 2 over 18, and then you can keep 2 or 3 under. Like in the really hot weather periods, they only let you keep 2 under, which is great. I commend that. And it usually takes you got to have two 5-pounders for sure. Maybe 5 1/4, and then some nice solid unders. So on Cedar, like a 13 3/4 inch would be a good solid under, and that fish is going to weigh about 1/6, something like that. So you're looking at around 13 pounds. So back in the 80s, you would have had probably a couple 7-pounders would have been a lot more common. So now you're looking at 14, 15, 16, 17 and a half pounds to win some of those tournaments. So
absolutely,
it has changed quite a lot. And the grass too. We talked about this before. You've got a lot more grass in there the last 10 to 15 years. When I first started fishing, and you've been fishing a lot longer than I have, but I remember you used to be able to fish a crankbait. I used to throw the little Bandit 200 series over there all the time. And you can't hardly do that now. There's a small window. Well, the last couple of years, there really hasn't even been a window to throw like a square bill or something. You can kind of just pick out a few lanes and work your crankbait really, really slow. But I do remember a time when it was a good crankbait lake. You can still fish deep crankbaits, but as far as shallow cranking, it's pretty tough right now. There's only a few places you can do it over there. So,
Ron, I know I put that question up there about your favorite bait in Egypt. So, I mean, we have to at least even it out here a little bit. So,
is this for me?
This is for Gabe.
Oh, you tell me what's been.
Hey, wait a minute! I know this guy. You don't have to answer his question.
Don't answer that question. You are making Gabe's day there.
I can, but I may not. It's just go buy a spinnerbait and throw it around. You'll catch fish on it. That's all it is.
I've seen Denny Hall.
Nick Gooden, I can tell you it's no different than that thumper I had you throwing in the Harkins.
That's right. Same deal.
Yeah. Denny Hall put on there, he said throwing the A-rig this past Saturday, he said it's addictive. I can definitely agree with that. Unless you're going to the highway and it's full of stumps and trees everywhere, it's a pain in the butt.
Hey, one thing I want to say on that A-rig, that and this is for A-rig fishing in 20 feet of water or less. Deeper water, not so much. One thing I've learned on that A-rig, it's throwing that old thing is work, or can be if your tackle isn't balanced just right. What I have found out, I've backed off a little bit on my rod with a little bit lighter tip, kind of like a swim bait type rod. I'm throwing a 7-foot think it's 7.5 Loomis, but it has a light action tip, and the weight on it says you can throw up to down to 3/16 ounce lure on it. And then I'm only throwing 17-pound fluorocarbon on the reel, and make sure you're not using a high-speed retrieve reel. It's like fishing a crankbait. You want a lower speed retrieve reel, so it doesn't. You don't want to be on a 10-speed trying to go uphill.
Right.
And that way you can, and then you're just reeling it as slow as you can. Takes the work out of it. And then it's just a matter of finding the shad. That'll make your A-rig fishing a lot more enjoyable.
It's funny you say that, because I hear these guys going with these bigger setups and these real stiff rods and everything else, and I've never ever thrown mine. Like, I've tried it on my flipping rod, and I hated it. It was hard to throw. It was hard to feel anything. I throw mine on. I've got 2 rods. One's the Abu Garcia Veritas, which is their frog rod, but it's got a real soft tip to it.
Yeah.
I use that one, and then I use the Shimano, the SLX, the medium heavy, and that's a really good rod for it too. But like you said, it's got just enough tip in there. You feel a lot more of it that way.
When A-rig first came out, it was 5-inch swim baits and 1/4 ounce heads, and your rig weighed a lot. Yeah. But now something like the Flash Mob Junior with 1/8 ounce heads, and you're fishing 3.8 Kytex or something. You don't have to have that big rod. I was throwing my A-rig this weekend at Table Rock on a 7'3" heavy, but it's got a moderate tip. It's a jig rod, but it's similar to what you're talking about, and it really loads up good, and you don't have to work so hard to cast that bait out there.
Yeah.
So, I've always been a one hook guy. You can drive that one hook and keep a fish on a little bit better. But with that Alabama rig, it's hard to pull back and set a hook hard.
Yeah, you don't really want to.
Right.
Yeah, and you'll get 3 hooks in the fish a lot of times, so they don't come off.
That's what I really like about that softer rod like that. Yeah. I think it plays into it a lot more than people think.
Yeah, and the other tip I would give people, kind of giving away some of my little, not secrets.
Yeah, I'm letting you go. I wasn't going to say anything, but
the other thing that's really important, and this is in all of your swim bait fishing, not just an A-rig is just 5 swim baits, right? We as bass fishermen, we always tend to think bigger is better. It's like with the hook size in particular sometimes. Go the opposite way on swim bait hooks. Use as small as you can get away with. You got to have big enough, to balance out the size of the plastic. But minimize the size of your hook, and it will greatly increase the action of the bait. It will provide more action, especially on a slow retrieve, which is often the way you're working a swim bait, whether it's on an A-rig or just throwing a swim bait or an underspin. And you will, at the end of the day, most days, that will provide you quite a few more bites. And usually those small, sharp hooks almost set themselves on a swim bait type of situation.
Definitely.
Seen Oki just jumped in there. Said he was stuck in a hotel in San Antonio.
Huh.
I hope he took a fishing rod with him.
Bummer. Well, Ron, I think we're going to let you go, bud. It's been awesome to talk to you, and I'm glad you took some time out of your evening to get on here. And we'd like to have you back on here and talk some more Southern Illinois fishing. You're just a wealth of knowledge on smallmouth and fishing up north, and our listeners learned a lot tonight. So we really appreciate it, buddy.
Well, I appreciate you letting me come on, and I hope I didn't scare away your loyal clientele.
Not at all, man. Not at all. I think you helped us out, and it was. I learned a lot, man. I really learned a lot, especially the mayfly hash. That was really interesting, and it's
the best way to learn that is to come up and go fishing.
I know, dude. I know.
I told you we worked something out.
I know. I'm putting $5 out of every paycheck in my sock drawer in a couple years, maybe.
I hope you get paid every day.
Oh hell, you just come on up. It's a 12-hour drive. Just have enough money to get there with gas, and we'll figure out the rest after you get there.
Well, I'm going to work towards that, because that sounds like a once-in-a-lifetime deal. I mean, it sounds like a great time.
Yeah, it is.
I find out he goes without me, he's going to be missing a boat.
Well, I'm expecting him to be with you, or you to be with him. So.
Yeah, I think he'd be standing at the state line, watching for me with a gun in his hand, not letting me go up there. So,
yeah.
But well, all right, Ron, we'll let you go, man, and I'll get a hold of you later, and we'll hook up again and hit the water sometime before you take off up north.
All right, boys, you take care.
All right, thanks,
see you, Ron. Thanks.
All right.
Is he still in there?
Yeah, he's still in there. He's still watching.
Okay.
So we can take this out now.
All right.
All right,
My
guys.
ears are starting to hurt.
Yeah, that's why I don't like those earbuds.
Let's see. Scroll back down. Oh, kill shot. You said something about the net head. I was just jabbing with you, man. I was just messing with you on that.
So Denny said use a 7-foot Loomis 843.
Not
real
real
stiff. Yeah. Falcon medium heavy uses flash mob. Yeah. Denny, I was just throwing that out there. We were talking about that A-rig and everything else, and I seriously hear so many people talking about how you have to have this major setup and you have to buy this reel and you have to buy this rod and it's got to be this stiff, and they're throwing on 50-pound braid, or some of them guys are even throwing on 25-pound fluoro. But just like Ron said, I throw mine on 17-pound fluoro. Now, my lakes that I'm fishing that A-rig in I get 20, 25, 26 foot deep, but most of it, like he says, about 20 foot. So that's usually what I kind of lean towards.
Man, I hope you guys like that. Ron has got so much information. I've been fortunate enough to fish with him a couple times out in the boat, and he's got a lot of good stories. So
Greg from Whitewell said he needs his contact info.
Yeah, he's a good dude, man. He's a good dude. It's R&D Outdoors.
Actually, I've got it all linked.
You got it all linked. That's awesome. Man, it's a great guy. I've personally been in the boat with him several times, and it's a fun time. I know it's a long drive, but it could be a summer trip. He books up fast. I think he's already booked up for the first month or so. But put that on your bucket list. It's great. I know it's on my bucket list. I want to get up there and experience some of those big fat smallmouth. That's one of my favorite fish to catch, man. We don't get a chance to catch on that much.
Well, when I go to Kentucky Lake, that's about my only time I get. Now, I get a few here and there at Lake of the Ozarks, but they're nothing like Kentucky Lake.
Right.
Kentucky Lake, I think living in that river system, having that water flow coming down through there with the current, I think they're a whole lot stronger. They fight tremendously. Right. So it's kind of like catching spots at Lake of the Ozarks, I guess. They're just that aggressive. So, And we don't go down south anymore when we go fish tournaments down there. So I haven't been down south in quite a few years, down towards Paris and that, to fish where the smallmouth are at. So I kind of miss doing that.
They're everywhere now. We've been catching them in Barkley quite a bit. Now Barkley, they're pretty common right there by the canal in that area.
Yep.
The first couple.
Yeah, Barkley. I always caught more at Barkley. Than I did at Kentucky. Kentucky, like I said, it was mainly just down south towards Paris. Now I will say, it's probably been 6 years ago. I fished with a guy, Mike Kiefer, real good guy, good fisherman. He actually caught. I want to say it was a 5.5. I don't know if it was 5.5 or 6.5. I want to say 5.5 pound smallmouth, and he let it go and he didn't get measurements on it and everything, and he regretted that the entire trip home. So, but it was one of the most beautiful smallmouth I've ever seen. The markings on it and everything, but
yeah, those northern smallmouth are completely different animals. Though they're just like he was saying, an 18-incher could weigh 4 pounds, 4.5 pounds. They're just huge. I'd like to get in on some of that. So
yeah, Robert Daniels says he's caught them in Blood River. Yep.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And see, Whitewell said you guys got plans of going to Mille Lacs and fish for some small jaws.
I do right here.
We'd love to do it. It's kind of a big trip, 12-hour drive. Maybe we'll see what's going to happen.
Wade wants to know if anyone has had success with an A-rig in gin clear water. Wade, I can tell you, I just got back from Table Rock and we were fishing in water clarity that was, I'd say majority of it was like 12 to 14 visibility, 12 to 14 feet visibility. And the guy was throwing an A-rig. I caught several on an A-rig as well. So it does work. And here's another interesting thing. he was fishing with braid that was all faded out. It was white. It wasn't even green or black. He didn't use it. I mean, I don't know how old this braid was. It was 50-pound braid, and it was straight up white in clear water, and he was whacking them on it. So I don't know, man. There's always a controversy. Do you use braid, or can the fish see it? Or I was talking with my buddy Mike Marfil, my travel partner, who fished on the boater side in the BFL, and we were talking about that. Or maybe it was you. I can't remember.
It was me and you.
It was you. That's right.
Yeah.
I was with him talking to you,
Yeah.
and that braid. It's even though it's visible, it's a solid plane, so it's not quite as obvious. And this is just how I'm thinking about it. Where if something that was kind of squiggly, it would kind of jump out at you. But it's almost like if you look at the horizon and it's a straight line, it doesn't jump out as much as like if there's clouds. So
They may think it was
a twig or a stick.
Well, just a sun ray coming through the water.
Right.
I mean, that's probably what it looked like.
But I never thought that a guy would be whacking those Kentuckies in 14-foot visibility water with white braid. But I witnessed it. It's pretty crazy.
Moxon put Kentucky Lake or Dale Hollow. Which one do you feel is a better smallmouth fishery? I've never fished Dale Hollow, so Kentucky Lake. I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I know Cumberland is really come on the last couple of years.
That's one place I was actually just telling my wife about that when we went to Knoxville. We were heading over that way, and I told her that is one place I would love to go fish.
Yeah, me too. There's a whole bunch of places I like to go fish.
Yeah, I mean within driving range, because I think it's still about 6 hours there.
Yeah, so, fishing fat man's out. Good night, Mother Nature's starting to call. I hear you.
So to have a buddy that does good on Cumberland Lake for smallmouth, that's all he fishes for. Gets mad if he catches largemouth.
One of those trash fish, those largemouth.
Yeah. You don't need that kind of negativity in your life. Get rid of that guy.
All right, guys. I think we're going to wrap it up. We've been in here for a while. We really appreciate you staying on here. I hope you liked our guest, Ron. He did it. He's just a wealth of knowledge. It's cool to. It's cool to hear about this stuff and read about this stuff, but it's another thing to actually, talk to somebody that's been doing this for a while. And, he cuts through. He's an honest guy. He cuts through it and tells you what he knows, which is what I like.
Read that right there.
Oh,
that makes all the sense in the world.
Do you think they see all those wires on that A rig? So does braid make a difference? Exactly, Tom. Exactly. Yeah. I don't understand it. It blows me away. That's kind of like the Tokyo rig too.
Yeah, it makes you question everything you've always been told and everything you've practiced about going with smaller line to stay, invisible and not be seen and this and that. And I guess it goes back to like what Gerald Swindle said in one of his videos about, tying a knot and this and that and leaving that tag in on there. They didn't see the first 35 yards of line. What makes you think they're going to see the last eighth of an inch? I guess it really does make sense. But
I think it's so much stimulation. There, you've got 5 blades, you got 5 paddle tails. It's just they just focus on the Kitex or whatever swim bait you're throwing. They don't even see the wires.
Right.
That's the only thing I can come up with. I'm certainly no fish, but
and next week we'll be back on my channel. Just let you guys know.
Yeah,
I know
we're gonna have Mike, right?
That's kind of a back and forth thing. So we're just kind of keeping it going back and forth each week. Like I said, I guess Gabe and I talked a little bit more. I know getting into the fishing season here, we had talked about, doing it every other week. So we'll kind of talk about that. Maybe we'll have an answer by next week, but we'll see. So,
yeah.
But, all right, guys. I appreciate everybody watching. Gabe, you got anything else to add?
That's it. Thanks for all the support, and we will see you next week.
All right. See you guys.